All right, today we'll be changing these sway bar bushings on this 2006, I believe, Hyundai Tiburon. The ones that do fit this car are a smooth design for the bracket to go over top. And they have this little nub that sticks out of the bottom, sort of sits into a recessed part of the subframe, I believe. So here's the part number, 54813-2C001. Let's get started. First thing we gotta do, we gotta get this thing up in the air and get the front wheels off. Okay, so now we have the wheels off on both sides. You can see this vehicle did need some sway bar links, which I ended up changing a couple weeks ago. But like I say, the bushing was the wrong bushing. So we got the right ones now. Looks like we're going to need some 14mm sockets, or a socket and a ratchet to get in there and take these bolts off. On the other side of this Tiburon, there is a plastic cover that sort of gets in the way here. So it's a couple 10mm bolts, I believe, to take that cover off. That's going to give you some room to get the that cap off on this side. So I'm just going to quickly zip these nuts off of the back side. I believe they are also 14mm, and we will continue from there once I get them off. All right, so they were actually a 15mm, but I was able to use this swivel, my 3/8 swivel on an impact gun here, to get in and take those nuts off. Now these aftermarket ones are a 15mm, but I believe the factory ones were 14mm. Now undo both of the sway bar links at the same time, and that way you don't have to fight against them when you go to take them out. So now that we got it off, you can see we move the bar nicely. It's gonna reduce any tension on those bolts when we go to take them out next. All right, so we gotta deal with this bracket here. It's in here. Sorry to blind you with the light. You can see it goes up to the power steering line there. Now that cover that sits inside of there sits in there like this. And you can see that there's a bit of a support for the plastic right here. And of course, directly behind it is the hole for the 10mm bolt that holds the damn thing on. So it sits in there like that. Good luck getting to it from the driver's, or the passenger's wheel well. I had absolutely no luck doing it like that. So I had to end up going underneath of the vehicle here. And you can see right there, if I zoom in, there's the top of the bracket. And I was able to just reach up in there with a 10mm wrench and put it on the back side and loosen it off like that. Now, before you take this passenger side bracket off, there's an additional bracket on the cap that holds the sway bar on. And this is the one that holds that plastic shield on. Now, there's a third 10mm bolt that goes through there to hold that line, that power steering line on. Okay, so you make sure that you take off that bracket, the 10mm bolt, and then once you take your two 14mm bolts off, you can remove that support bracket. And now we can get in here and take this cap off. This is the bushing. Like I said, it's got a slit in the bottom of it, so it just opens up and goes onto the bar, and vice versa. So there's just a little comparison. You can totally see the size difference between the two bushings. Nice and worn out, and nice and tight. So don't worry about how far the bushings slide in and out. There are stops. You can see the stops there that are part of the sway bar, and that will not allow the bushing to go further any more past that. So that will center the bar. Once you get the bushings and all that stuff on there, you don't have to worry about the sway bar being too far this way or too far this way. Okay, so before we tighten those things up and preload our suspension, we want to now install our sway bar links and tighten the nuts to 33 foot-pounds. Once that's done, we can lower the vehicle down onto jack stands. Now there's one more thing that I recommend you do before you tighten up those caps on the sway bar bushings, and that is to preload your suspension. Now I just use some jack stands. Obviously I have access to a hoist, so for those of you that are doing this in your laneway or not on a lift, you may not have the jack stands to be able to do this. You can still tighten the caps down. It's just the reason that I preload the suspension is to allow all of the suspension, in this case the sway bar, to sit in its final resting position where it would normally sit when the vehicle is settled onto the ground under its own weight. And by doing this, it does not stress out that bushing, because if we tighten it down when the suspension is at its max extension and then we lower it down, what's going to happen? The bar is going to twist as it settles on the ground. It's going to grab that bushing and turn it. And now it's just under stress the whole time it's sitting there. Now, I've got them installed, but just almost tight, but not 100% tight. So now that I've got it preloaded, I'm ready to get in there with my 14mm and tighten those down. To gain access to these back bolts back here, you can turn the steering wheel to allow the rack to move out of the way. It will give you some more room on those back ones depending on which way the steering is turned. Now we're ready to tighten down those bolts. They get tightened to 33 foot-pounds. All right, so we've got our power steering 10mm bolt in and our two 10mm bolts to hold that plastic shield on. Now we just got to throw our wheels on and you're ready to go. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Got any questions, throw them down in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe.